Just sit back and relax as we are about to begin. This session is streamed on our Facebook and YouTube accounts. For more details on FIC, please check social media accounts on Facebook, www.facebook.com/filmindustryconferenceph, Twitter @FICPH1, and Instagram @FilmIndustryConferencePH. Film Industry Conference Online 2020 is presented by Film Development Council of the Philippines in partnership with Full Circle Lab, supported by International Film Commission partners, Korean Film Council, Singapore Film Commission, National Film Development Corporation Malaysia, and Film Philippines Office, with international partners Netflix, SEAFIC Lab, Locarno Open Doors, IFFR Pro Rotterdam Lab, Asian Shadows, and Raven Banner Entertainment. With local film festival partners, Cine Kasimanwa Western Visayas Film Festival, Cine Filipino Film Festival, Cinemalaya Independent Film Festival, Pista ng Pelikulang Pilipino, and Q Cinema International Film Festival. Special thanks to Ortigas Cinemas. The Film Industry Conference, or FIC, first conducted by the Film Development Council of the Philippines in 2017, aims to bring together international experts and stakeholders to share and discuss the latest trends, opportunities, platforms, and cooperation that Filipino producers and filmmakers can explore for the development, production, and distribution of their projects with the intent of crossing beyond local borders. As the Film Industry Conference shifts to an online platform this 2020, the Film Development Council of the Philippines is conducting the Film Industry Conference Online 2020, featuring local and international partners with a goal to continue the synergy between international experts, professionals, and stakeholders even online. This will be a great opportunity to give a platform and discuss the best practices, challenges, opportunities, and new norms of the industry given the current situation in a global pandemic. In the new age of global collaborations, the Asian region is rising as the next filming hub in the world. Filled with stories that resonate to a wider global audience, we discover the journey of emerging ASEAN talents, from how they started with their local and unique stories to global screens, and how their plans are shifting in the time of pandemic. Our moderator for this panel is the Executive Director of Southeast Asia Fiction Film Lab, or SEAFIC Lab, a pioneering script and development lab for Southeast Asian filmmakers. Previously, he was international programmer for Toronto International Film Festival, as well as program consultant for Hong Kong International Film Festival and Cannes Critics Week. Prior to that, he was Director of Marketing and Special Projects Acquisitions for Sales Agent Fortissimo Films. He acted as Reading Committee member for Hong Kong Asia Film Financing Forum and was advisory member of the Asian Film Awards. He was festival jury at Berlin, Sarajevo, Seattle, Antalya, Chichon, and others. His producing credits include Pen Ek Ratanruang's Samui Song and Headshot, Bu Junfeng's Apprentice, Josh Kim's How to Win at Checkers Every Time, Pang Ho-cheung's Dream Home, among others. He was named Future Leaders Producers in 2013 by Screen International and was awarded 2017 Producer of the Year by Asian Film Commission in Busan. Let us all welcome Raymond Phathanavirangoon.
Hello. Hello? Okay, is there a lag? I'm not sure.
Yes,
There is a slight lag, I think. Welcome everyone. My name is Raymond Phathanavirangoon, and my internet lately has been a little bit terrible, so please don't mind the backdrop. This is the best place where I get reception. But today's topic is about how international platforms like festivals, labs, and workshops provide platforms to develop Southeast Asian stories. And we have 4 great panelists today, so I will first introduce them all before they show up. So first we have Nicole Midori Woodford from Singapore. She is a director, writer, and editor who has been at Busan Asian Film Academy, Talents Tokyo, Berlinale Talents, as well as SEAFIC. Her shorts have been selected in competition at festivals such as Busan, Clermont-Ferrand, and Singapore film festivals. And her first feature project, You Are There, was in both SEAFIC and Torino Film Lab. Also based in Toronto, Canada. He is the co-founder of E&W Films and was previously senior programmer at Singapore International Film Festival. He has produced Kirsten Tan's Popeye, as well as upcoming projects by Vietnamese director Le Bao called Taste, which is a Singapore, France, Thailand, Germany co-production, as well as the upcoming Mongrel by Chiang Wei Liang, and all 3 projects have been in Torino Film Lab. Then we have producer Tan Se-eun, and Se-eun is also an alumni of Berlinale Talents. She helped produce Wet Season by Anthony Chen and was previously program manager of Singapore International Film Festival. She is the co-founder of Momo Films, and Momo represents award-winning shorts from Southeast Asian filmmakers as well as feet. And some of her current projects include Ajuma by He Shuming. Arnold is a model student by Sorayos Prapapan, and both are SEAFIC alumni projects, as well as the upcoming Don't Cry Butterflies by Duong Du Lin in Full Circle Lab. And last but not least, of course, we have Philippines' very own Sheron Dayoc. And Sheron is the director and writer of Women of the Weeping River, which won Best Picture at Gawad Urian and also Q Cinema, among a host of other prizes. His first film, Halal, was in Busan New Currents competition, won NetPac Special Mention at the Berlin Film Festival in Forum, and he is also an alumni of Busan Asian Film Academy, Talents Tokyo, and Sundance Screenwriters Lab. So please welcome all of them. I guess we switch screens. So,
Hi.
hello.
Hi everyone. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let's start.
Hi.
So my first question, and I'll ask all of you, is, why did you decide to do your projects internationally? What was it that made you decide, I want to do this with, labs and co-productions and funds? Let's just start it off with Se-eun. Se-eun, please let us know why.
Yeah. Right. I think being in Singapore, I think we're in a very specific position and country where it's perceived as like one of the more affluent region, and then we're also adequately supported by our film commission. But despite all of that, due to our population and country size, being a small country means like small domestic market, and it's really difficult to make the film industry sustainable. And I think that's one of the good reasons why we turn to like international co-productions as a strategy for our project to explore new markets, new partners, to work with talents, and maybe Weijie can touch on a little bit about that as well, because producing in Singapore is really hard, and making films, finding financiers and the right people to work on it, I think it's been quite a difficult task, and I think co-production provide partial solution to that.
Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
hop on to Weijie. What do you have to say?
I guess, yeah, to reiterate what Sun was mentioning, sometimes it's partially not so much of a choice. It's more out of necessity because the types of films that perhaps, Sun and myself are interested in producing, there's no way that we can rely solely on like the Singapore sort of market. And I think the nature of the projects that we do, or at least we try to do, they address maybe a sort of wider scope. So a wider scope to a smaller audience, but then international, if that makes any sense.
So your films are basically not domestic, local box office type of films, then? You would categorize that?
I don't. Yeah, they're not.
There's nothing wrong
I
with
think. Yeah, but like in Singapore, film literacy isn't that high either. People like don't go into cinema looking for like local film to watch. It's not a natural thing that comes to like audiences in our country, and kind of tragic in some ways. Yeah.
Nicole, do you agree as well with their position?
Yeah, I mean, I think these are common woes faced by all of us Singaporean filmmakers, and I'm sure in Southeast Asia, the rest of Southeast Asia as well. I think myself as a director, I feel like when I was discussing this idea, I pitched this story to my producer Jeremy. We wanted to bring this to a different kind of audience, not just the local audiences, but because it's a film that's going to be set in both Japan and Singapore. I think naturally we thought let's go to these international labs and also learn from international labs how do we actually position this better, because I don't think I have that experience, especially this is my first feature. But I also think I'm interested to learn how to make films for a more diverse sort of audience while to finance it at the same time, because I think these labs give us that kind of exposure that for indie filmmakers, we can't rely on private financing. So I personally hope that this will also give the project a bit more of an international stage, even before the film is being made. Yeah.
And Sheron, as the non-Singaporean in the group, anything that you want to say about why did you decide to do your projects internationally, or was it something that kind of happened?
Yeah, well, actually, I share the same challenges in the Philippines. We share the same challenges because of the kind of films that we do. On the personal level, as a director, as a filmmaker, I would like to reach to a wider audience. To do that, I need to tell a very universal story with a universal experience. And going to these labs allowed me to harness that skill, develop that craft on how to craft a story that would resonate to different people coming from different backgrounds. So that would be my primary objective, why I would like to go through different labs, because of answering the problem with regards to distribution. We would like to connect to a lot of for to connect with the international audience. Yeah.
But the kind of projects that you also do, I mean, is it conscious that you are trying to do something that is not necessarily super commercial, or is it just something that you feel like this is something that you really want to show the world and express? What makes you decide on the kind of projects that you do? Sheron, sorry.
Yeah, me. Oh yeah. I always go back to to the creative. To be honest, with the kind of films that we do, and I would say I connect more to narrative that has strong social voice, and these kind of films may not necessarily be palatable for the local audience. So it would be the next option is to look for other possible audience that would be outside of the Philippines. So that's why it's important for me, for other filmmakers to do international collaboration.
And do you agree with that, Nicole? Is the kind of story that you make, is it because it's something that you really want to express yourself rather than basically being something that is purely for the market itself? Or
Yeah, actually, I think the idea came first before even figuring out how and why I'm going to these international labs. And it so happens after speaking to my producer, that's when I learned I should go to these sort of international labs. So, but I think because of my own background, coming from a very multicultural, sort of multiracial family, with different sort of like, you know, it's really a melting pot. My family of Japan and Singapore kind of was already something I wanted to look at as a director. And it wasn't about, oh, okay, I'm going to make this because it's going to be an international project. Yeah. So I think then later Solving came and we like, okay, we have to bring this to these labs since it's a co-production. Yeah.
So, and Weijie and Sean, how do you guys choose your projects? And is it, just what you really, do you choose it because you like the directors, or do you like the projects? And you know that these are not necessarily commercial projects domestically, but you chose them anyways. What is the decision process behind that? Let's start with Weijie.
I think it's different every time. It's usually, I guess, quite irrational, unfortunately. I mean, I guess like a lot of them, they start because, you have I would have a relationship with the filmmaker. I guess the nice thing was because I was at the Singapore Film Festival, I had the opportunity to watch many, many short films and feature films as well, and the opportunity to meet filmmakers that otherwise I would have had a chance to meet. So I think that helped as well. But in the case of filmmakers such as like Kirsten or with Wei Liang, both of them I've known for over a decade before we even thought about working together. So I think that helped as well. And then, so I don't actively go out and look for, let's say, non-commercial super art house projects, like for example Les Baos. It just kind of happened that way. Definitely not a conscious decision. I think it's knowing, getting to know the people, know the filmmaker, then watching their works and the kind of natural chemistry, and then it just comes together in that way, and then we figure out later.
So then
I think the process is kind of similar to me. I think their short films, their previous works, their scripts, I think it needs to get me excited. And of course, like there needs to be some sort of chemistry. I always imagine, working with directors as some sort of marriage, because you're together for a long, long time, right? From like the development process to the financing and then the distribution, and it goes on for almost a lifetime. So I think you need to have like pretty good tandem working together. And I think, of course, I think for a producer, it's also super important to get like very excited about the project and the stories that they're telling, so that we're on the same page all the time. Yeah.
So you would say that relationship and their previous short films is extremely important for you to select a project, then basically, right? I would guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
A mixture.
I'm the same.
Yeah. How do you pick
if you've seen me with my
how do you pick?
It's very similar to you guys. It's a relationship thing. I am not the easiest person in the world, and people know it, so they choose me at their own peril. But at the same time, it works out well because I've been working with the same directors for like over a decade, like Jun Feng. I mean, we've known each other for 12 years, and we started working a very long time ago. So I think it is really a relationship thing. And of course, you have to like what they do, and you have to have the same kind of goals, because in the end, if you don't have the same objective, it's really hard for you to go forward, and there's a real implicit trust that I think is at the key of the relationship, because I'm free to do a lot of things and he knows what I'm doing, and vice versa. We don't fight over a lot of things, but when we fight, we really fight. Okay.
But for the project, right? I think you mentioned before.
Yeah. We fight about the projects. We don't fight about personal things, obviously. But it's like being in a, like you said, in a family. You're like, I hate you too, and then the next day you have to go, oh, what's for dinner? That's the way it works. Okay. So let's go into why did you apply for the labs and workshops that you have gone to? And all of you guys have had projects that all went to many different kinds of labs before. Let's start with Sheron, because you went to Busan Asian Film Academy, Talents Tokyo, and also to Sundance Lab. Why did you decide to apply to all these things?
Well, actually, each program has its unique experience for me. There are labs that would allow you to discover your voice as a filmmaker, as a director. There are programs like that, and there are programs by like Asian Film Academy Filmex. It's really about learning how to collaborate with international creatives. There are, for example, as well for Tokyo Docs. I remember it's a pitch workshop. It's really understanding the strength of your project when you're pitching. So each program it has its own strength and impact with in terms of developing the project. And I particularly remember Sundance, the essence or the most important experience I had was really embracing my identity as a filmmaker, identifying that identity, and to be to trust that creative instinct. So that's something that I've learned through that Atlas and that institute.
But you are one of the 4 Southeast Asians who have ever gotten into Sundance. You are one of the extremely few, and there hasn't been a Southeast Asian director in Sundance for nearly like maybe 6-7 years. How did you even get into Sundance? What happened?
Of course, during that time, way back 2010, I didn't know that such program exists. So I remember I was competing in Berlin in the forum section. It so happened that Alicia Weston, during that time, she was working for Sundance Institute. They were looking for a new filmmaker to actually help. And then it so happened that my film won a special mention jury for that pack. And then I was noticed and asked to submit for the program. So after a week, I submitted, and of course, I had no expectation because what I know, Sundance Institute is a program only for American filmmakers. So I didn't realize that they give like 1 or 2 slots for international filmmakers. But yeah. I mean, non-American filmmakers. So that's where I've learned about it and got it. Yeah.
Mm. So in many ways, it's because of your first feature that has won something in a big festival like Berlin that allowed you to go to the bigger labs like that, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was a huge help.
But
The first.
but the thing is, but even before that, because you went to Asian Film Academy before that, right? So when did you go, and did you already know what you were doing when you went there to the Asian Film Academy?
Well, honestly, the main reason why I submitted during that time was like I just want to travel. It's like the perks of like traveling for free. And then I realized that hey, this is quite cool. I mean, I've been learning a lot. I'm meeting people that I admire, filmmakers that I adore, Abbas Kiarostami. I met him. Shen. I mean, at first it was really just. I mean, of course, I did understand the importance of program that time until I had an experience going through the labs. I realized how impactful, important it is for our career as a filmmaker.
Mm. And Nicole, you were in the same year as Sheron, I think, right, for the Asian Film Academy. I think that was 2010.
Um, oh,
I was 2008.
I think we
I
will.
think Zurich.
Oh, 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
They were class.
yeah. But we met because he was my senior. I think we met at Busan, and we got to know each other from then. Yeah, mine was 2010. Yeah. So then Abbas Kiarostami was the dean at that time. Yeah. So yeah, that was actually how I met Sheron and a lot of other filmmakers.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Tingli,
did you, when
the sound
you
design.
applied, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you
Go
applied
ahead.
for
It's
Asian
okay.
Film Academy with the idea of basically like similar to Sheron that you wanted to travel, or was it because you had certain goals in mind at that time?
I think what happened was that I had a friend who was from the same film school, Dix Young, and he actually recommended me to submit for AFA because he was in AFA the previous year. So then I tried and I got in, and I mean, I was what I was doing actually, and I think I got into Berlinale Talents in the same year, so that was also quite exciting. But I think for AFA, I think it was really like a kind of a turning point because after that I met a lot of filmmakers in Korea. Like, okay, I want to make another film, so I won a prize from AFA. It was I think like some cash prize, and so I saved that money to make my next film, which actually went to Busan in 2015. Yeah, it took a while, but yes. Yeah.
But did you also think that like that you were just to find yourself when you first applied to places like Asian Film Academy or Berlinale Talents? I mean, were you still kind of like thinking, okay, this is maybe what I want to do, and then later on in subsequent labs, it kind of helped to formulate those ideas of who you are as a filmmaker?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think back then, 2010, I wasn't sure what sort of films I was wanting to make, but I think it got me to think more about the next short film. And I think from there also I watched like a lot of other films. So I kind of was trying to understand uh, more about like it was a conversation I had with myself that sparked off from meeting these people. And obviously AFA, we were all in this boot camp, we had to make a film. So I think from the conversations I had with the other filmmakers there, it got me to really think deeper about making, more films that were. It's not just for commercial value or anything, but my own. Yeah. So definitely, it started from that point. Yeah.
And you mentioned watching films and things like that at festivals such as Busan. Did that also help you in terms of like broadening your horizons about what the possibilities are? Because, I have a lot of people who sometimes apply to labs who really don't have a very big like breadth of like film watching experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, but for AFA back then they were very strict. If it's like lockdown, but then after they release you from the from Apina, it's called Apina, the hostel. Then we could watch films. I mean, we were allowed to watch films as part of the program. But for Berlinale Tenants, since there was more freedom, I would watch films whenever I had free time. Yeah, until like really late, and I'll go with the talents members to watch films and the short films, all the competition shots. Yeah, as much as possible. Yeah,
Okay.
I think also because it
And
was so cold,
because
it was better to be in the snow. Anyway, sorry.
no worries. And I think because Suan and Weijie, both of you are kind of in that privileged situation because, as you both said, you both work for the Singapore Film Festival. Did that kind of help spark your idea of being a producer? Because just watching these talents and watching these films and gaining a lot of knowledge of cinema through all these different experiences. Let's start with Suan.
Yeah, I think so because when you are at when you work with a festival, you get to see so much more films that aren't screened at the festival, and I think like you get a sense of like what's in the region and what kind of like filmmakers are out there, and I think like it's quite inspiring for me to just hear so many voices through the different kind of films that we received each year. I think like uh, that's definitely inspired me to work with like filmmakers that not only make narrative films but like different expression through the medium of film. Yeah.
And yeah, like for example, you're co-producing a Thai film, for example. Arnold is a model student.
Yeah.
I mean, did you
Yeah.
make short films before and then like wanted to work with him because of his short films, or?
Right. Yeah, that project is interesting because like I knew the filmmaker Sorayos before like quite well, but then it was during SEAFIC that we spent like so much time together, and I think that was the seed of like uh, our collaboration. Like because of SEAFIC, we spent time together. We knew our project like in so much in detail, and then like later on when we met in different festivals like Singapore Film Festival, and then in Locarno when he was there for his to present his short and like to pitch his film. I think that was when we decided to work together. And I think that's one of the benefits of like attending international platforms and labs. It's like not only what the program that's planned during that duration of time, but what happens after is really interesting too, because you form relationships and sometimes collaborations, happen when you least expect it to.
Weijie, do you agree with that sentiment? And also about, how festivals have formed, your taste and your voice as a producer?
I think so. I think something that Susan mentioned that I thought was nice was that when she talked about besides the films that the festival screens, what's always nice is that behind the scenes, it's the films that don't get screened or don't get selected, and some of those films are really special, but you get a sense of festival mechanics and why certain films that are really strong or really engaging do not end up in the selection. So that's also interesting to see the sort of the festival rules and regulations and the limitations of a film festival in some ways. And it definitely helped to shape the kinds of projects that I looked at, and how like you were saying, how to position a project when you look at credits of films that you like, and you're like, they went to here, okay, maybe then you go and research more about those labs or workshops or markets.
And okay, can you name me, basically just from your experience, one of the labs or workshop that you went to that you felt was really beneficial to you and your project? Like just give an example. Weijie, sorry.
You're asking me?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the obvious one would be Torino Film Lab, because all three of the projects that I've been working on more recently have all gone to Torino. So the first one being Popeye with Kirsten, and then followed by Taste by Lebao, and then currently Mongrel. Mongrel's in a different program this time. It's in Script Lab, but the first two were in Feature Lab. And I think that being in the lab 3 times has really shaped it shaped my identity as a filmmaker, knowing the people in the program intimately, knowing how the program works and how it's tweaked every single time. So I mean, each program, I'm sure it's similar with SEAFIC, each time you run the program, it's always slightly different based on the mentors, based on the filmmakers, and that's always been interesting to see as well, the reaction to the different people that come on board each time.
But you as a producer, you're not actually attending most of the labs, right? Can you explain a little bit about your role as a producer when these projects go to the lab?
Okay. I mean, for Torino, for Feature Lab, I would go for all the workshops. For Script Lab, not so much. I think I'm only really involved at the end, like in November. But when we go there, we're also part of the script consultation session. So we sit in on the script consultation sessions. There are mentors that are, sales agents or from publicity or other producers, and they talk or audience design, and they talk very much about the behind the scenes sort of stuff. So I mean, while the film development is taking place, developing the script, you're also looking at where are you going to position the film. How are you going to finance the film? What are the sort of co-production obligations if you're interested in tapping on funds from this country, that country, and those sorts of things. So that was very helpful. Listening to other producers who are very familiar with, for example, co-production, or talking to sales agents at a very, very early stage and hearing, getting very honest feedback, I guess, about problems. I think that's the nice thing, like when they tell you all the things that don't work, and then you have to grapple with, this is something that I need to think about.
Do you have sometimes issues with the cultural differences at all in terms of like explaining your project to an audience who may not understand necessarily the cultural context coming from their region, our region in Southeast Asia? Do you find that sometimes there are a little bit of this kind of cross-cultural miscommunication or misunderstanding? Weijie? Yeah.
I think so. No, I think so for sure. But then I think that becomes a challenge that how you communicate your very culturally specific project to let's say a French co-producer or a German audience or something like that. I think it's a useful sort of platform, and it's a safe, I guess it's a safe sort of environment where you can try things, I guess, before you meet the industry. So no, but to answer your question, yeah, for sure, there is like this kind of cultural sort of thing, but then I think it happens with other countries as well. So when, let's say, a South African project is pitching at these platforms as well, there's also certain sort of specificities that I might not get, for example, when I'm reading the material.
Sheron, did you have the same kind of feelings when you were the only Asian guy in Sundance and having to explain to all the Americans what you're trying to do?
Yeah, definitely. Because at first I thought like, oh, there's a lot of foreigners. I forgot that I'm the foreigner there. Because Western perspective is completely different from Southeast. I remember, for example, there's a comment about this film, which I produced, that what do you call this? They said that they find it unlikely for the mom to behave such a way that she did not fight for her son. But in the Philippine context, it's really possible. It's something real because we have a different way of looking at things. So they have a really different thing. They have because of they don't know much about Southeast Asian culture. It's really sometimes it's quite a challenge to comprehend the situation or the intent of the project.
Sorry, Sheron, I don't know if it's just me, but you cut out a bit. Understand the beginning part? Did it cut out for you guys? Sorry. Can you just repeat that part maybe? If I was not the only one out?
Oh yeah, what was I saying? Well, definitely it's a challenge, because we have different culture, we have different point of view and experience, so we look at things differently. Especially when we discuss about conflict, when we discuss about women in power, have totally different experience and history. So things might not translate clearly if it's not established properly in the script, in the project. For example, like I remember there is an albino water buffalo in the film, in my film, but in my script. And they find it strange, but it didn't quite understand what's the intent of that albino water buffalo. But for me as a Filipino and for some other readers, it's quite clear. It reflects about the colonialization, of the Philippines for 333 years. So these are small details that might lost in translation because we do not share the same history, the same culture, the same belief. Yeah, those are the challenges. Yeah.
But how did Sundance benefit you though? Because I know that in the end, because of your Sundance experience, you did get quite a few extra funding for your film, right? So
yeah, they give a small grant for a development grant, and beyond that is really about having that long-term relationship because it's not like a one-time deal. It's a continuous support. I remember a year after, if I wanted to go to New York to go to Jamaica for like a vacation. So they paid for my airfare. They give me tickets to attend Tribeca Film Institute, Tribeca Film Festival. So those are the perks of going through the program. But I think about the most important thing that I've realized is that coming from the southern part of the Philippines, Zamboanga, Mindanao, I realized that there's a bigger world out there, and it's not because getting into Sundance for me is like almost impossible. It's impossible. Um, but getting into the program made me realize that there's always there's a bigger world out there, and you just have to push yourself. Yeah.
I mean, it's still impossible because not only are you from Zamboanga who got into Sundance, you're the only Filipino who's ever been in Sundance. So,
Yeah.
Sundance Lab.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway. I'm kidding. Okay, so how about you, Nicole? Because like, how did these kinds of labs benefit you? And can you give one instance of a lab that you felt was really helpful for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I actually had the benefit of going to both SEAFIC and Torino, but I guess it's at two different stages of development that I was at both labs. I'll just mention very quickly, that for SEAFIC it was at a pretty early stage. So by the time I got to Torino, I think it was much more developed. So I think I definitely felt quite lucky that I got to experience both. Because Torino Film Lab, I think it was more like, to promote the film and how the elements of the production are going to come together. So I got to meet like DOP Majas Adli, who shot Son of Saul, the director Ritesh Batra for Lunchbox. So I think it was like a more like, how do we realize the script now? Whereas SEAFIC, it was more like, exploring the ideas and as a director also, how do I want to say the story? So I would say that I know you mentioned just one lab, but yeah, I thought, just mentioning the trajectory, how one brought me to the other, I felt like, I'm very happy with how the project has come. Yeah. And I think also, I mean, we all talk about the mentors and the super and the jury or the consultants and sales agents that we met. But I also felt like it was actually meeting other filmmakers that were facing the problems, similar problems, that actually made me feel that sense of we have to go on, and I'm still in touch with, some of these filmmakers. So I think that sort of support and exchange of ideas from the labs is also quite important. Yeah. So the network, yeah. Sorry.
But you said that basically that you had a trajectory. So can you explain a little bit about this trajectory? Where did you start with at SEAFIC, and then why did you decide to apply to Torino afterwards?
I think me and my producer Jeremy, we it's not like we really had to be honest, we didn't really have a very thought out plan. I think we were kind of like fumbling and seeing what comes along, improvising as we go along. I think SEAFIC was rather spontaneous. Yeah, it was very spontaneous, and Tor was also very spontaneous. So we actually applied the day of the deadline for Torino, and yeah, so we were kind of last minute people. But I think we knew that Feature Lab might be quite suitable to, especially mine's the first feature, so I feel like I need to learn from more people. And I also benefited from Talents Tokyo because Talents Tokyo pitching in Japan was quite important because I wanted to see how this story resonate with the Japanese audience and the Japanese industry. So actually the reception for the pitch was really good. So it kind of soothed any uncertainties we had. And I think after that, meeting some friends in Talents Tokyo who were Japanese and based in Japan was also helpful. Yeah. So yeah, again, I don't think we had like a great master plan. It was rather spontaneous, but I think what I learned was from each lab. Like I met Shozo Ichiyama, who became, one of the producers for the film. So I think with each lab, we pick up something that kind of added to our film. So it was quite I do feel very thankful for the opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, because Shozo was one of our selection committee members for SEAFIC that year. So it was very serendipitous, basically, that, he was one of the mentors who then met you and then basically took it on. So I think that was a really good coincidence in many ways.
Yeah.
And so then do you have the same kind of thing that you also wanted to talk about in terms of labs and how it helped you as a producer and your experiences afterwards?
Yeah, I thought I would just build on what Nicole said about SEAFIC, because I find it really precious that and privileged really that there's a lab that's specifically focused on Southeast Asian projects. Just now we mentioned a little bit about culture, and I think it's really special when you have like peers who are close to your culture and have a close understanding of like each other's project and the context of the project. So during the feedback, I think my director found it really helpful. I went to SEAFIC with Ajuma by He Shuming, and that year, I think as a producer, I felt like I gained a lot, because like SEAFIC was held together with Produce, where you go through the co-production stuff, financing plans, and it's a program plan for a producer, together, like, so the director will go for their script, consult, and then we have our own thing going on. And I think like it's kind of like beneficial for especially young producers to learn about that. And that year we went to Link of Cine Asia, which was held during the Busan International Film Festival, and we also had like access to Platform Busan. And I think that was really helpful for my project specifically, because it was set in both Singapore and Korea. And because of SEAFIC and Link of Cine Asia, we managed to meet some partners that we want to work with. And I think like that's one of the huge gains that I had. And during SEAFIC, we met like with various mentors like Lorna, and because of that relation and connection that we had, we were able to go to Macau, International Film Festival of Macau. We went to the market there, and we also won a prize there. So I think that really helped give our project some traction throughout the whole journey that year.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that basically like one of the differences for us at SEAFIC is that our lab is an Asian lab. And the way it's a little bit different from, say, other labs outside is that we are not just labs that concentrate on films that has to go to these big A-list festivals and things like that. We also want projects that can actually work within the Asian region. And so they're not like always the art house kind of films, but they're also kind of like, whether it be comedy or horror that can work in a wider context of Asia is something that we are also very active about. And, we want many different kinds of projects, and linking people with other Asian festivals and Asian partners is something that I think, I want to do, and I want our projects to do, so that we're not always just thinking, oh, the projects have to go to Europe to basically like raise money and stuff like that. And I think, in terms of Ajuma, I think it's kind of like that, but I still think that the film, if it's done well, can definitely travel to European festivals. But in many ways, in terms of audience, it is more of an Asian audience film. Do you agree with that, kind of like thinking?
I think it's not typically an art house film, like it's very different from Labao's film. Maybe, yeah, it's very different. It's not planned for like a extremely long festival travel, but I think it will rest because of the story, the content of it, and like, the accessibility of like Korean culture, K-pop, the popularity of it. I think the reach of the film will be really wide. I think it will resonate really well with aunties, middle-aged women, people who are fans of like Korean culture in Asia. But I also think that beyond Asia, there are people crazy about like K-pop and stuff like that. So I believe we have an audience there too. So it's not really your typical festival sort of film, but that's why I think like for us, the experience at SEAFIC is really interesting.
And the world has changed a lot since you guys were in SEAFIC, because now BTS has the #1 single in the US, and 2.5 years ago you wouldn't think that would be happening. So now suddenly Ajuma actually makes sense for a bigger world, just due to the popularity of K-pop that didn't exist when you guys first started the project, I think, right?
So when we first started the project, I remember in our SEAFIC pitch we wrote, oh yeah, this film I think will resonate well within Asia. But I think this throughout like 2 years later, I think like our audience base has actually expanded thanks to the K-pop culture and like the way it's been traveling. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we don't have so much time left, maybe about 15 minutes. Shall we start with some of the questions? I don't see any questions yet, though, so maybe we should let some people actually start asking, if they're interested. Oh, wow, there's suddenly a lot of questions. Holy crap.
Whoa.
Okay.
Wow.
So let's start with the first one, I guess. What made you interested in international collaborations with your project instead of staying local with your projects? I mean, we addressed this a little bit just now, but Sheron, maybe you explain a little bit from your context of the Philippines.
Oh yeah. Because for one in a producer's point of view, in terms of the film, again, in terms of the film that we do, we have limited audience in terms of the kind of film that we do, and we see the opportunity to go international by collaborating with international producers who will help us position the film once it's done to connect to a wider audience. So yeah, I mean, as shared earlier, so that would be one of the reasons why we would like to go beyond looking.
Okay, let's follow that up with you also, Sheron, because I think this would come best from you. How important is it for you guys to maintain the localness of your story, and how is it affected when you plan international collaborations?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you stick with your identity, your identity as a filmmaker in a project, because there's going to be a gazillion of projects out there. So what would make your project unique? Perhaps it's really about reflecting your identity as a nation and making sure that it resonates in terms of the universal experience. Because there's gonna be a lot of Joes in the field of production in submitting grants. Uh, what stands out is that we have that unique identity representing your home country. So I think that's very important.
Weijie, I also want to ask that same question about localness, because in your case, it's very special. You're producing a completely Vietnamese project, and you're not Vietnamese, and you don't speak the language. So how did you basically produce a film that can retain its localness, not even Vietnamese?
I think in the case of Le Bao, because there's a Vietnamese producer involved as well, so the way that our roles are divided are very specific. So as you say, no matter how long, how much time I spend in Vietnam, speaking, whether speaking to them or experiencing Vietnam, I'm not going to know as much as Le Bao and Thao, his Vietnamese producer. But what I can do for the project and why I came on board the project and our collaboration was to bring in other sort of partners and to help to build the project, because for yourself, of course, you know that Bao and Tao, they're both extremely shy people. And the kind of film that they wanted to make with the resources that they had in Vietnam was impossible. So I came on board to try to like you said, when I go to labs, it's to try to position it and try to get more people to understand what they're trying to do. Of course, they might not get everything, but the idea is that if I can understand enough to communicate enough for international partners to come on board. So that was kind of my role for a project like that, because as you said, it's impossible for me to really understand, especially for a Le Bao's project, because it's about something very specific in Vietnam, Nigerian immigrants in Vietnam, which is super specific.
The next question is, how do you guys believe a project can be over-workshopped? Is the film lab for everybody? Nicole, you went to 2 different labs, script labs too, which is very rare case. Did you feel that it was over-workshopped, or do you feel that each of them helped you in different stages of your writing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think I learned from the first lab how to receive feedback and how to sieve through it. So I actually didn't fear this problem. I think it's really up to the filmmaker. If you take in every single word of feedback, you're gonna feel like, this is over workshopped, and it's the script might become confused. So I think I was quite I didn't really experience this problem, but I feel that the producer and directors need to know very well, again, like a plan of where their project needs to go through, and how many is too much. Yeah, and I think maybe setting a timeline for development is good. Yeah, so that beyond that, the project, whether is it ready or not. Yeah, but I'm also wondering, the other panelists here, what do you guys think about?
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys feel.
Yes. So then, what do you think? Is it possible to be over workshopping a lab?
Right. I mean, so far I haven't experienced that. I mean, for my own project, Ajuma, we've been working on it since like 2015. So we've been working on the script since then, and every year, every part of the year we do revisions. And I think like, throughout this 5 year of revision, we've come to a place where like we feel really satisfied with the script. So I'm not sure about the term like over workshopping, but I think for my own project so far, the time and the perspectives that are needed to make the project better and to just strengthen the script.
And you also worked at the SGIFF lab, the Singapore Film Festival, which also has a film lab called C Lab. Do you think that that's like, because somebody else also asked, can a filmmaker succeed without doing with all these labs? And how do you define a successful filmmaker? Do you want to elaborate on that as somebody who also basically represented the lab?
That's a huge question. We can talk a little bit about that, but I think like for the SGIF lab, I think unlike SEAFIC, it's not a long lab. It's a short lab that is held within 7 days, and it's more a story pitch lab. And I think what we did at the point of time was to provide a safe space where people can bounce their idea and to help them find the story that they really want to tell. Maybe Weijie can add a little bit more about that, and then we can talk about like the idea of like successful filmmaker and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess like it really I mean, in terms of whether a project has to go through a lab, I guess it really depends on the filmmaker, and it really depends on the project. So when I first started out, when I graduated from film school, the very first project I did, it got all its financing based on a log line. Of course, it was a commercial project, and then it's probably the only film I've done that's made a lot of money. But that's a separate thing. But I think with that sort of project, because the filmmaker had come from TV, so there was a certain sort of, and there were very clear expectations on what type of film it was and stuff like that. It didn't necessarily need to go through those, a lab sort of setting. But I think with early films for that director, because he had made a lot of TV before, so he was more experienced and knew how to deal with certain pressures, I guess. But maybe with filmmakers embarking on their first feature, second features, it could be helpful to do labs. But I think the idea is to look at what are the different labs out there, research what are the different labs out there, and see what the previous projects were at those labs to see if it's suitable for you. There's like, for example, it might not make sense to go to no, I take that back. I mean, I guess it really depends. So I was going to say that if you have a genre film, you shouldn't apply for blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that's the case. I think it depends, yeah.
Sheron, because you're kind of you went to different labs, but a lot of your success has been quite local in terms of like the way the Filipino audience knows you now because of the success of Women of the Weeping River winning all the best films locally. So how do you define that as a filmmaker?
Yeah, to answer the first question regarding the over workshop, I think for me personally, you would only feel or experience the feeling of over workshop if you don't exactly know what to do with your project, if you don't have the strong vision. I think to begin with is really important, though the inside or the message changes through the process. But I think it's really important that you know your core as a filmmaker. And going through the process, it might lead you elsewhere if you don't have that strong creative compass. I think that's very important. So that's where for me personally, the experience of film lab fatigue comes in because you don't exactly know what you want to do. Yeah, that would be my response to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add my own 2 cents because as somebody who runs SEAFIC, I can tell you right now that yes, you can definitely overlap. And that should be really surprising for somebody who runs a lab to say that you can definitely do that. And I'll be honest, I have seen some projects just kept on going to labs, and I didn't understand why they were doing it because I felt like they didn't have an end goal. You know, what are they doing? And we've had projects submitted to SEAFIC that went to other very big labs before. And the first thing we ask is why? Because if you cannot explain why you want to come to SEAFIC, what are you trying to get here? Then we don't submit, we don't accept it, even though you've already been to some very famous labs. Because to us, if you've been there, we actually will consider you less because you've already had that experience. We prefer to give that chance to other filmmakers who have not gone to other labs, unless the reason why you come to our lab is very specific and you know what you want from it. Then I think then that's okay. But yeah, I definitely am a little bit afraid of projects that went to too many places. For example, with Nicole's project, I remember at the end I did encourage you to actually apply to other labs because I felt that it would benefit. But with some other projects, they have asked me and they said, hey, should I apply? And I kind of said, well, I'm not really sure. You have to answer that yourself. Personally, I think maybe not. And then in the end, they decide themselves what they felt was necessary for them. And I think that it's a personal question that differs for each project and what they're looking for. So that's just my 2 cents. Yeah. Okay, next question. What's your approach in making local projects versus international projects? What's the difference, if there's any? Yeah, I mean, that's quite a broad question. Nicole, do you want to say, because your project is kind of unusual because it's probably the least local because you're connected culturally to Japan and Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky question because it's very, very broad. It's very open. I mean, I don't really think as a director I try to distinguish this very consciously, but I think it's more like, again, from the personal, it should become very universal. You know, the whole mantra about if you have a very personal story, it should resonate on a universal level. And I mean, I feel that my approach is really just about I think what Sheron said, to be very honest to yourself. You know, as a director, if you're sort of reverse engineering the project so that it will hit this market, and then go to this festival, kind of defeats the point. Yeah, so I think in the conversations that I've had with my producer, it's always story, character, who we're going to cast, and very little about where we're going to go, you know, because that's something we'll find out when the film is done. And I think it's maybe something that, you know, again, something also Sheron said, if you know exactly what you want, regardless of whether you're trying to make it more international or local, it would resonate. But obviously, because it's my first feature, that's why these labs did help me understand better how to better position it. Because like for Torino Film Lab, there's the audience design element of the feature lab. So we kind of talked about how do we market it, and that was something I really didn't know anything about. Like what would audiences be looking out for when you were to position it? Yeah. So I think that I would say would help make me better understand the international approach as a writer director. Yeah.
And Weijie, because I think this is, the two questions are kind of similar because you can even add, you know, apart from the how challenging is it to bring films abroad despite the cultural differences, and how did we respond, with the question of what's your approach in making local films versus international projects. I mean, they're kind of similar because it's all about cultural differences and how do you position your project vis-a-vis international versus local. So what do you think?
I mean, in terms of the international versus local, I'm going to manipulate the question a little bit and relate it more to pitching maybe. So I think depending on the platform that you're pitching at. So, for example, if I was pitching to the way that I would pitch, let's say Popeye, when we pitch to the Singapore Film Commission, is very different from the way that we would pitch Popeye at Torino Film Lab or to at Cannes Atelier. And it's not to say that it's a different project; it's the same project, but you bring out different parts of the project that you think will resonate with that specific audience. So, for example, when we were pitching to the Singapore Film Commission, the things that we were talking about were more related to, for example, Southeast Asia, related to its relevance to Singapore. Kirsten is a filmmaker, a Singaporean filmmaker, those sorts of things. Whereas maybe in Torino, I'm trying to recollect what we said. It was maybe more related to for better or worse, it was more related maybe to the novelty of seeing an elephant going on a road trip, in a way, and then dealing with certain sort of questions, for example. So within Southeast Asia, maybe the elephant is a more normal sort of thing, but then in Torino or in Cannes, it's like, an elephant, and then they were also thinking about animal welfare and things like that. So customizing, so same project, but customizing the pitch and customizing the positioning to that specific market. And I think related to the sort of cultural differences, the first question, the challenge, it was quite eye-opening, when we were releasing, let's say, Popeye in the different countries and seeing all the different posters and how the different distributors came up with different posters. So we're totally different in each country. Well, maybe not totally different, but even like right down to the color scheme totally changed the tone of what's going out to the audiences. So, I mean, that was a learning experience as well. So just listening to people on the ground in the different countries and having a conversation so that it doesn't veer too far away from what the film is, but you're consulting with people that in theory understand what's happening in their local markets.
Sun, do you agree with that also? The way that you're pitching to different places?
Yeah, I think so, but I think you tweak it to different audiences, and then like what we just said, different details of the film resonate differently. But I think like generally to me, I think the core of the story is the one. I mean, if you have good core of the story that usually touches people's heart, I think like that will just help you, whether it's an international or local audience.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question, Sheron. Will the collaboration affect the culture of a certain story for a film? Like, for example, Women of a Weeping River, because I know that when you went to Sundance, it was very, very early, right? You just wrote something very quickly for Sundance. Did that, then because you started so early, did that kind of international lab affect the culture of your story, or did it change anything?
Based on my experience operating Sundance Lab, they were very conscious about giving me the freedom to explore. In fact, what I experienced is that they allowed me to discover, because for sure they don't know exactly. I mean, they don't have strong knowledge about Philippines, about our history, about our culture. So what they did is actually because there were like 4 or 5 mentors. So what they did is to allow me to go through the creative process, to discover my own voice, to discover the kind of filmmaking that I want. I remember there was an exercise. I forgot the name of the mentor. Sorry. I was given 10 minutes to write 5 scenes about a king. And then all of a sudden, for 5 minutes, I completed the exercise. And she told me, you know what? Based on the exercise, I can see that you have a strong creative sensibility in terms of telling stories about children. So they allowed me through a creative process exercise to discover who I am as a filmmaker.
Nicole, would you agree with that as well? That it didn't affect the culture of your film, but maybe basically it helped you to understand better what you're trying to do, or what do you say?
Yeah, I don't think it affected the the cultural references or any of the had that direct implication, but there was a couple of questions raised that showed me, that there are some different understanding of cultural norms and uh, tradition. So, like, I think there was a jury member in Torino during the feedback session, with the jury panel. I think one of them said that they felt there was like a sexual undertone with the lead female teenage protagonist who's like 13 and the uncle. So then that kind of made me and my producer felt like a little confused because we did not intend for any of this sexual undertones. Yeah, so then but it got us just to be more mindful of the kind of person we're going to cast. Yeah, but I don't think it had a direct implication. I think culturally it showed us that people interpret this relationship differently. Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds more like a personal Freudian complex of that person rather than your script, because I've read the script. Some of you know it. I don't even think that remotely. I'm not sure where that comes from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is really simple, which is, speaking of finance, do you generally earn more in terms of profit with your international projects than your local ones? Answer: what profits? End. I'm kidding. Anybody want to talk about this?
I feel like, I'll let the producers answer this.
I think the profits is always dependent on what kind of film it is. And then, like in our case, we're talking about independent films where profits are so hard to come by. But I mean, it's a possibility, right? And if it's an international project where you position it for like different markets, I think the chances are you probably get more earnings from maybe like the various markets and also your festival travels. And now, of course, like the VOD and OTT platform. Having said that, I mean, the distribution scene is so volatile now. Like, the demand for art house films is not that high, and COVID and Netflix, Amazon, it's changing rapidly. So I think in the coming year or two, we'll see lots of changes in terms of profit, and we'll find out for ourselves like what kind of projects it makes more sense. Yeah.
I think that's really a great thing to touch on, because the world is rapidly changing and we don't know where it's going. Maybe people will miss the cinema so much they go out in droves. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's my wishful thinking, but it will affect how we all make our films, I think. But at least right now, we'll continue to do what we do because we still have certain passion for it. Otherwise, we would all be doing something else. And maybe quit while we can, because I'm old. So you guys have, all of you are younger than me. So anyway, Weijie, do you agree? Quit while you can?
While you're still young, yes. No.
Ending on such a great note.
Yeah, but what do you think of the profits thing? Yeah.
The profits thing, I mean, it again, like I guess with the film, like the only example I can bring, because like Taste and Mongrel are still in Taste is in post-production, Mongrel is in early development. So for Popeye, I would say that with Popeye, yes, we definitely made more internationally than within Singapore and Thailand. And the interesting thing is, I think we made the most in the Netherlands and Australia, which is totally random, but so we made more of our, well, I wouldn't say profit, but we made more of our revenue from the international market versus the local. Yeah.
I've made 8 films, and I think I would never consider any of them to have made profits. I think the best I can describe them is that they broke even.
They recouped, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the best way to say it. But Sheron, you made some money on your film. I'm just kidding. It's lies. I'm kidding. Okay, what are your hopes then for Southeast Asia films in the near future? Of course, maybe barring the whole COVID and all these things that are happening, as being more collaborative with international partners. What do you think, Sheron?
Yeah, I would dream to have for Southeast Asian filmmakers to collaborate and share our film in a more international platform, not only for Southeast Asia. That it becomes a nurturing experience for everyone, for Southeast Asian filmmakers. Yeah.
Do you agree with that, you guys, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I think the collaborative aspect is already happening. I mean, all of you guys here and doing co-productions but I think it's more like how sustainable it's going to be, and again, like what Sun said, it's very volatile. So I think my hope is it will not sort of taper off. It's going to continue and just gather more momentum rather than everyone suddenly deciding because of COVID to just shoot locally or stick to the local market. But I hope that if it continues that momentum, I think that's already success. Yeah, despite the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's not thinking about COVID. Like, I think it's a pretty exciting time for Southeast Asian collaborations. Last year we had the Singapore co-production grant, and then of course in the Philippines there is the ASEAN grant that's coming up and the international co-production grant. And I think like this these grants that are encouraging co-productions is pretty exciting. I think like it will help encourage working with talents that is like all across the region, and hopefully I think more of these grants will come from like the other Southeast Asian countries, and we can work together more, and we don't have to go to Europe all the time to make a film. Yeah.
Weijie?
Yeah, I think I echo the sentiments of everyone else, where I think within Southeast Asia, the community in terms of the filmmakers, I think there's always been a certain sort of collaborative nature and sharing of information. But what's been really nice is in the past maybe 5-10 years, we've seen labs pop up within the region that are catered specifically for the region. And we've seen, like Sun mentioned, the IMDA and FDCP coming up with grants, and hopefully more organizations within Southeast Asia will see the value of works from the region, and we can do like regional sort of co-productions, and government agencies coming on board and being supportive of what's happening as well, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys. That's the last question. Really appreciate everybody's comments and questions. So thank you so much. I will be moderating the next panel as well, which is a masterclass by Isabelle Glachant from Asian Shadows on Filmmaker's Guide to Film Distribution. So stay put for that. But anyways, thank you so much to Sheron, Weijie, Nicole, Sun, especially to Weijie for waking up so early because you're in Toronto, Canada, and interrupting your Toronto Film Festival experience right now. So,
yeah, I'm watching 2 films today.
Nice. Hope you're awake for that. What are you watching? I'm curious.
Nomadland, of course, and Memory House.
Fantastic. Great. Hope you like Nomadland. Yeah, I'm very excited.
I'm very curious.
Well, so, yes. Okay, thank you all. I think, do we just turn off?
Yeah,
I guess so.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Raymond, for moderating.
Our speakers,
thank you,
Sheron,
Thanks, everyone.
Weijie, and Nicole, and of course to Raymond for moderating our incredible panel. It's truly interesting to learn more from our speakers themselves, their insight on how films from the ASEAN region are positioning themselves in the international scene and the role of our current talents in that movement. We are all excited to watch and see your future projects real soon. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you have any more questions for our speakers, please let us know so we can share them after this session. Again, let's give our panel a virtual round of applause and see you in the next session.
Thank you very much to our speaker for a very insightful talk, and to our dear audience for tuning in. Keep safe, everyone, and we hope to see you in our next sessions. For more details on FIC, please check social media accounts on Facebook, www.facebook.com/filmindustryconferenceph, Twitter @FICPH1, and Instagram @FilmIndustryConferencePH. Check out the full lineup of public sessions and master classes for this year's Film Industry Conference. Visit our website at fdcp.ph/FIC.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I hope you all had fun. Thank you.